In my last video, I talked about pixel snapping in upscaled pixel art games and what I did to fix it in Godot. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you step by step how to set up an upscaled pixel art game and then how to implement this fix. I know you'll probably have your own pixel art game set up that you want to implement this fix in, so I'll go pretty quickly through the upscale setup. So we'll start by selecting a node 2D as our root node, then we'll add a camera 2D as a child, and then we just have to create a pixel art game. You might already have a pixel art game that you're working off. I'm just going to set one up really quick, making a background and some floor using a tile map layer, and I'm using some assets that I made earlier. I'm also using a static body 2D to give the floor some collision so the player doesn't just fall eternally, and then I'll add the player themselves, so I'll just add a character body 2D, and then I'll add a collision shape 2D to this node to give the player some collision, and I'll set that equal to a rectangle collision. Then I'm going to give the player a sprite 2D and I'll attach this player.png asset I have as the texture. If your assets are blurry, by the way, if your pixels are blurring, make sure you search for the texture property and set the filter to nearest. Then I'm going to fit this collision to the player. And lastly, to make it playable, I have to attach a script to the character body 2D. And if we do, Godot will automatically populate it with some code to move around the player. So if we give this a run now and select this as our main scene, you can see we have a game ready that we can run around in. Okay, I went quickly through that part because I'm assuming you already have a game set up. But the important thing is that we have a character that can move and we have a camera 2D. So the next thing I'm going to do is attach a script to the camera. I'm just going to call it Subpixel Camera and press create. And then in the process function, we want to make the camera follow the player smoothly, so I'll do position equals position.lerp, open and close soft brackets. For the first value, we'll get a reference to our player and we'll get their dot position. And for the second thing, we'll put delta times 3. If we play this now, you can see the camera smoothly follows the player. And now all that's left for the setup is to upscale our game. So I'm going to create a new scene and we're going to make a root 2D node and we're going to call it main. Then we'll add a child and we'll add a sub viewport container. And then as a child of that, we'll add a sub viewport. And then from our file system, we can just drag and drop our game scene and we'll drop it as a child of sub viewport. And then we have some settings here to change. So in the sub viewport, if we go over to the inspector, we're going to change size. And this is going to be your native render resolution before we upscale. So I'm going to have 480 pixels by 270 pixels on screen. And if we upscale this by 4, we'd get 1920 by 1080, which is what we need to fill the monitor. I just noticed there my game isn't actually child of sub viewport, so make sure it is. And now when we press play, I want it to run our main scene instead of our game scene. So I'll go into the project settings, I'll go to run and I'll change it here. And if we play this now, you can see the game is rendering up there at 480 by 270. So the next step is to upscale. And that's really easy to do. We just have to click on the sub viewport container, go down in the inspector to scale and set it to 4. And if we play this now, you can see it fills the screen, but you can also see that my textures are blurry. So I'm going to fix this by going to my game node, and in the inspector I'll search for filter and I'm going to change that property to nearest. And I'm also going to do that exact same thing for the sub viewport container node. And you can see when I play this now, our pixel art is no longer blurry and it's being upscaled correctly. While we're here, I'll add a shader to the sub viewport container. So I'll click on it, I'll search for material in the inspector, new shader material, click on this shader material, go to shader, new shader, and we'll just call this subpixel or whatever you want. And if we open it up, this is going to be really simple. We're just going to create a new variable, or uniform as it's called in this shader language, of type vec2 called cam offset and set it equal to a new vec2 that's just 0.0 for both values. Then in void vertex, we want to move the screen by this offset, so we'll do vertex plus equals cam offset. And don't forget you have to put semicolons when you're in this shader language for both lines that we added. Now you can see if it works by going into shader parameters, and if you adjust this X and Y value, you can see we're moving the viewport. So that works perfectly. Next up, we're going to head back over to the camera script, and we're going to create a new variable called actual cam pos, and it's going to be of type vector2. Then when we're setting the camera's position, let's replace position with actual cam pos. And just to make sure there's no confusion, we're going to be moving it to the player's global position instead of just their position. And now to get our offset, which is the distance between the camera's subpixel position and the nearest pixel perfect position, we can create a new variable called cam subpixel offset and set it equal to actual cam pos.round minus actual cam pos. And now we just have to send that offset to our shader. So we're in the camera script, so our parent is the game node, and then the parent of that is our viewport, and the parent of that is our sub viewport container, which has the script attached. So I'm going to do it the lazy way and just say get parent.getParent.getParent, but you should really do this in a singleton because this is really bad. And then we do .material.set shader parameter, the name of the uniform we created in the shader, which I set to cam offset, put that in quotes, and then pass in our cam subpixel offset. And then the last thing we have to do is set our our camera's position equal to actual cam pos.round. Again, I'm using global position there to avoid any confusion, and if we press play on this now, you can see that our camera is moving smoothly. And we're only left with one slight problem, and you can kind of see that at the top especially, but all the edges and corners of the screen, you can see them kind of jittering. And that's because we're moving the viewport and it's leaving this empty transparent space behind. So we can fix that by going to our sub viewport and rendering 2 extra pixels on the X and Y, which means one at the top and bottom and one at the left and right. And then if we click on sub viewport container and go to position, set this to minus whatever you're scaling your game up by. So I'm scaling it up by 4, so I'll set it to -4, -4. And if we press play, you can see all the edges of the screen are no longer jittering and we have our smooth camera movement. Perfect. These files will be available for download on my Patreon, which you can access by supporting me. And I also want to thank everyone very much for supporting me on Patreon, because I would not be able to make these videos without you guys. Thanks for watching, thanks for the support, and see you in the next video.